Hello and welcome to my tutorial on how to use the FMCPI FMC class. Now the FMC class is the one that you're going to always instantiate or I should say have an instance of every single time you're using the FMC API. And the reason for that is all this code, all this package is based around or dealing with the API of the Cisco FMC Firepower Management Center. So as you see here on the screen, I've got a little bit of a starting of a script here, and the reason I did it this way, I realize I could probably do that. The reason I did it this way is I wanted to start out with as bare minimum as possible to give you an idea of kind of the methodology, why it's set up the way it is. So there's two ways really that you can import the FMC API package. You can, or library. You can do it this way with the import FMC API command. We've probably all seen that before. Or if you want to get fancy, you can say from FMCPI import star, just to make the pie charm happy. It's not happy. All right, no worries. So the reason I do these two different ways is I want to show you that if I go down here and just use the import FMC API, if I say FMC API dot, you'll see that I have a full listing of all the classes, all the variables, everything that you have access to from within the FMC API. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to type FMC API all the time just to get my FMC code, right? So the other option, or to get to the different classes and functions I want to work with. So the other idea, or the other option, whoops, I missed. The other way is to import the FMC API code directly. Now the problem with this one, or the trick with this one is, notice I'm typing FMC. You can see the FMC option here, and you can see it's listed under the package or library of FMCPI, but also you get all these other built-ins. Here's another one, physical interface, because it had an F in it. The downside is you don't see all the other FMC API classes. You have to kind of know what they are, like, let's see, network group, right? There's a network group, or IP network or application. I'm looking over here where they say FMC API. It's easier for those of us who know how to program in the FMC API to not do have to type out FMC API every single time. But for this particular tutorial, I'm going to leave it like that, just so that we can see the objects as we're creating them. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull up a little bit of code up here that I had hidden below. And what this statement does is it does a couple things. It instantiates an instance of the FMC class inside the FMC API, okay? And in this case, I'm calling it FMC underscore tutorial. That way, you can see exactly what the name of the class is. This does not have to have the word FMC in it. It doesn't have to be that long. This could have very easily been, you know, in a lot of my other examples, I say FMC1, right? It could be just FMC if you want. And the Python suggested naming convention is your instances should all be in lowercase, and the actual class, the actual real class should be in camel case. It's just that so happens FMC is an acronym, so I kept it all uppercase for everything. All right, so let's go back to FMC tutorial. And the reason you do this in a with block like this, and you type in your code indented, like I have here on line 12, is that the with statement does some things for you. It actually runs some special code or designated code within the FMC class to not only when you instantiate an instance of it, in this case our FMC underscore tutorial, but also when you exit the block code. So if I had a bunch of code in here, I don't know, I'm just making some stuff up, and then when I was done, when I come back out here and either end the program or start some new line of code, this differential between line 15 and 16 where I'm dropping out of the with block, code block, there is a function inside the FMC class that gets run, and it's called the dunder exit or underscore exit function. I always get my functions and methods names messed up, so forgive me. Okay, so if I'm saying it wrong. So the reason you use the with statement is that the FMC object, the FMC class has some features that need to be run as you instantiate it. And the one that's most important is that the established connection between your FMC instance, FMC underscore tutorial, and the actual physical FMC that you're communicating with, you have to negotiate what is called a token and maintain that connection to the token. The token is valid only for 30 minutes at a time. It can be renewed up to 3 times, giving you a total of 2 hours of constant connection with the FMC. That said, if it's not the end of the world, it's not like your program can't be longer than 2 hours, because that just means a new token would need to be established if the existing token is fully expired or totally gone. But the with statement has, as I was saying, we had the dunder exit, but when you instantiate a copy of it, there's the dunder enter or underscore underscore enter method inside the FMC class that gets ran that actually does that token establishment. I actually have it do 2 things. I have it do the the token establishment with the physical or the real FMC. I also have it populate some information from the version function, which we're going to see a little bit more about in one moment. The other way you could do this, and I don't recommend it, is you could say, pretend this isn't here. We could say fmc api.fmc and put all this information in here. And I forgot a piece. You could say in fmc underscore tutorial equals, and that way I'm instantiating a copy of the I got double quotes here. I'm instantiating a copy, or double parentheses, I'm instantiating an instance of the FMC class, just like I did up on line 11, but in this case, it did not run the dunder enter, and it won't run the dunder exit when it's time. So unfortunately, even though I have an FMC instance, I can't really use it because it's not connected to the real FMC. So if for whatever reason you want to do it this way, you're going to have to say fmc tutorial.dunder enter to instantiate that token establishment, and then when you're all said and done, if you want, you can run the fmc dunder exit command, and the only thing that the dunder exit command does, so effective. Let me back up. So let's say I had my code in here. Remember my ASDFs, and let's come back up here and put some ASDFs in here. Effectively, lines 11 through, and I'm including 15 because that breaks us out of the code block, 11 through 15 and 16 through 21 are effectively the same set of code. They're doing the exact same thing. They're running ASDF, whatever that is, 3 times. We're doing a dunder enter at the beginning, and when we exit out, we're doing a dunder exit at the end. Now, the reason I wouldn't do it this way is you have to remember all that logic, and the with statement maintains or does all that connection establishment and connection removal for you. You can do this for opening of files, writing to files, and whatnot as well. So the with statement's really cool. So I'm just saying use it. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, these variables I pass to it. So we have the FMC requires to need to know the IP address or host name of the FMC you're working with, a valid username and password to log into said FMC, and this is your API connection. So if you want to do this, I would recommend that you don't use the valid, or I shouldn't say valid, an existing username that people would use to log into the GUI of the FMC. Create a new special user for your API objects, and the reason is that the FMC has a rule that only allows you can have multiple users logged into it at the same time, but a single user can only be logged in only once at a time. So if you had admin logged in at the GUI, and then you try and use an API script to log in as admin, you're going to have some contention there. Somebody's going to get logged out and be unhappy. So as a preparation for the way I write my scripts, I create a username called API script, give it a password that admin123 is the default for all the FMC stuff, so I just went with it. You could call it whatever you want. This is not the username password is not predefined in the FMC by default. That's something I had to create. Anyway, the other thing that we have in here is this auto deploy. Now, auto deploy is what gets ran the auto deploy feature gets ran when you instantiate or when you run the dunder exit method. That's why I say it's kind of optional. You don't have to run it, because saying auto deploy equal false effectively disables what dunder exit is trying to accomplish. What auto deploy does is, after you make a bunch of series of changes, go back to my ASDF examples, right? So I'm making all these changes, and then when I want to get out of here, when I drop out of the code block from line 15 to line 16, basically I'm asking the FMC to see if there's any affected devices that it manages, and push the changes, whatever these ASDFs did, push those changes out to those affected devices. And again, in my mindset, I'm always thinking of the next generation firewall, the FTD device, because that's what I mostly work with. All right, long talk about just the with statement. So we're going to instantiate the with statement, and we're not going, I'm saying auto deploy equal false only because it takes an extra 15 seconds, and for recording, I'm not worried about it. The default, by the way, you do not have to put an auto deploy option in here. The other three are required, but that is the minimum requirement you need, is a host name, a username, and a password. Auto deploy by default is true. So the FMC will automatically try and push changes that you've made to the FMC. So I'm just leaving it like that for ease. Now I'm going to delete out some more empty lines here to bring up a new set of code. Oops, cheating and see my next couple lines. Okay, so in this block of code, with the with statement, we're instantiating connection to the FMC. And then what I wanted to do was show you some of the most basic things you can do. Now, FMC underscore tutorial is the name of my instance, then dot to reference any of the methods that are available to that instance or within that instance, and there's a function called version. And all version does is do a GET request to the FMC and parse the returned JSON to populate some version information. So what I wanted to do is run the version command, and then one of the variables that gets set is this server underscore version. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it. And it'll take a second. And by the way, what I also have set up is, I forgot to do that, is the output.log is where all your logging files go, and it's always, the output log is always in the directory from which you ran your program. So if I say output.log ampersand, what I'm doing is tailing the output log. I'm basically printing out the output log, and then as I run it, if I go back up here and run it again, you'll see that the output log gets deleted, or truncated as they say, and then it reruns those commands. So I've collected server information, and I'm populating these variables: the VDB version, SRU version, server version, and geo version instance variables. So I just happen to select server version as one of those. And in this print statements, you can see that here's the raw JSON we got back. So you can see that the server version information and all that information is actually in that JSON value, but then part of the version function that I have, I go ahead and populate some instance variables, in this case server version, with that detailed information. And you can see build 6.2.1, or I mean version 6.2.1 build 342. And that's how that works. So, and when I exit it out of here, it actually, that's where the auto deploy equals false comes into play. When I said auto deploy changes set to false, use the deploy button if you want to make changes. And I just left the option for you. Okay, so now that we have that, and we see how the server version runs, the way I would recommend that you use it by using either the methods within, in this case, the FMC class, or if you want to use other objects, the other classes that are available to you. And again, I'll show you a quick example of that. So if I do FMC tutorial dot, you can see that we have a whole range. Whoops, that's not what I want. FMC Api dot. You can see we have a whole range of these different class objects that will have some sort of logic dealing with the topic at hand, like an access control policy rule. And if I selected that one, I don't know how that works. There you go. Then I can actually use that function to create an instance that would manipulate an access control policy rule, which that's for a later tutorial. The reason I bring this up is I would recommend, if possible, use the built-in classes wherever you can. But if one of them doesn't work the way you want it, or if you we don't have full parity, feature parity between all the possible things you can do with the FMC API, the FMC's API, we don't have full parity inside the Python package FMC API, then you can do this. And so I'm going to delete out some more lines and bring up kind of doing the manual form. I don't need to do this delete feature because I just deleted those lines above it. Now in this case, what we're doing is effectively the same thing as what the server version command was doing. Or sorry, the version function is doing, and that is we're going to generate the URL that is used to go to the FMC's API and that particular path to get to the server version information. So there is a variable called the platform underscore URL that gets set during the instantiation of the FMC instance. And I'm tacking on the end of it /info/server version. And then what we're going to do down here in line 13 is all I'm going to do is use the send to API method inside the FMC class instance, or the FMC underscore tutorial instance, to do a get method against that URL. And I'm going to just print the results. Now you can see that we have this paging equals and all this JSON information here, or I should say it's a Python dictionary, but it came from JSON. When I run it this time, we're instantiating an instance. It's running the dunder enter information. It's setting this URL variable, and then we're going to use that URL variable to get or send an API get request to that URL, and you can see we get the paging equals, and if I scroll over to the right, you'll see we have server version and the like that's in here. Server version right there. And the downside about doing it this way is that now, because I'm not using the version function that's inside the FMC API, specifically the FMC class, now those server version variables aren't set properly. That's something you'd have to now parse this dictionary to get that information if you want to do it that way. I'm not recommending it, so I'm not going to go too nuts. But I just wanted to show you that you can use the send underscore to underscore API FMC method to be able to get post delete your own objects if that's what you want to do, assuming that that's desirable to you. And for whatever reason. And then what you do is you'd say JSON underscore data equals, and then you'd put in your JSON data, whatever. I'm just going to say data. So let's say it's just some string that you had up here. Data equals, blah, whatever JSON format. So basically what the goal of the FMC API Python package or library is here to do is to properly format your URL, properly gather data if necessary, instantiate a request to the FMC for you, and well, it does some validate checking, make sure you have the minimum requirements and whatnot, and then return that JSON to you, and possibly do something with like setting local variables and whatnot. And I think that's it. I think that's what we're going to leave this tutorial. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in another tutorial.